My name is Evelyn Anderson. I'm 40, and I live in Boston with my daughter Amira. What I'm about to tell you happened more than 2 years ago, July 2023, but some nights it still sits on my chest like a weight I can't lift. At the time, Amira had just turned 10, all knees and elbows and bright opinions, the kind of kid who still believed adults automatically meant safety. That belief didn't survive that summer. It was around 1:00 a.m. in London. The hotel room was dark, the kind of dark that makes the air feel thick. I'd fallen asleep still wearing my cardigan, laptop closed, but not put away because my body never really adjusted to the new time zone. Then the phone rang. Not a normal ring either. My mother's video call tone, sharp and jarring, like an alarm meant to yank me from a dream. My eyes snapped open. My heart snapped open with them. Mom never called me that late. She knew it was past midnight in London. She knew. My fingers fumbled as I grabbed the phone from the nightstand. I saw her name on the screen, Teresa, and a cold anxiety crawled up my spine. I swiped to accept. I was bracing for my mother's face, for panic, for sirens in the background, for anything. Instead, the screen filled with my daughter. Amira's face was too close to the camera, her eyes too wide, her cheeks streaked with something that looked like sweat and tears mixed together. The light was dim, and it took a second for my brain to understand. She was calling me from Grandma's phone, and she was shaking. "Mom," her voice cracked like glass. "Mom, please save me." The words hit me so hard I sat straight up, like I'd been punched. My stomach dropped, hollow and burning at the same time. "Amira, baby, I'm here." My voice came out too loud, too desperate. I forced it softer, steadier. "I'm listening. Tell me what's happening. I'll help you." Her eyes flicked behind her, fast, terrified. She kept glancing like someone could appear any second and rip the phone away. Grandma. Amira swallowed, and I heard the tiniest sound, like she was trying not to sob. She said, I'm not allowed to call you, but I had to. I had to because... Slow down. I pressed the phone to my ear like it could make the distance smaller. "You're safe with me right now. Talk to me." In broken pieces, in rushed whispers, Amira told me enough to turn my blood to ice. She wasn't sleeping in her room. She was sleeping in the laundry room on the floor because Casey, my sister Camilla's daughter, was in Amira's bed for comfort. Amira was doing chores from morning until night. Lawn, trash, laundry, dog walking, porch scrubbing. And if she rested, Grandma got angry. Food was limited. "Only if I finish everything," Amira whispered, like she was confessing a crime. And then she said the sentence that made me grip the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "They said they might sell our house." My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "What?" My voice came out raw. "Who said that?" "I heard Grandpa talking." Amira's lip trembled. "He said, if you're far away, it's easier." My vision blurred. For a second I couldn't breathe, because my brain was trying to reject the idea the way your body rejects poison. My parents, my sister, the people I trusted. And my daughter, my sweet, stubborn, brave little girl, was trapped in my house like a servant. "Mom," Amira suddenly whispered, eyes wide again. "I have to hang up. Grandma's coming back." "No, wait." My chest tightened. "Amira, listen to me. Listen." She turned her head like she could hear footsteps. I could actually see her fear moving through her body, like it had taken control of her muscles. "Baby, do exactly what I say." I spoke fast but careful, the way you do when you're talking someone off a ledge. "After you hang up, go to the call history, delete this call, then delete it from the trash if there is one. Do you understand?" Amira nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "And if anyone asks, you never called me." My throat burned. "You were asleep." She nodded again, and the camera shook. Then, right before the screen went dark, she whispered, "I knew you'd listen." The call ended, and the silence that followed was violent. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed like my body forgot how to move. My mind spun so fast it felt like nausea. Rage rose up in me, hot, animal, uncontrollable, followed by something worse. Guilt, because I left her. I left her with them. In the middle of the night, in a foreign city, I suddenly felt like the worst mother on earth. I'd been chasing a career upgrade, convincing myself I was doing it for our future. Better schools, safer neighborhood, easier life. But what good was any of it if my daughter wasn't safe? If you're listening, you're probably asking the same question I asked myself as I stared at the hotel wall. Why was I in London at all? Where was Amira's father? Why wasn't she with me? To understand, you have to understand my life with my daughter. I'm divorced. My marriage ended in 2018 when Amira was 5. Her father, Nathan, moved to another state not long after. Not because he didn't love her, life is rarely that simple, but because he chose distance over day-to-day responsibility. Holidays and phone calls weren't the same as homework, scraped knees, and bedtime fears. So it was me, always me. My small circle of family was my parents, Philip and Teresa, and my younger sister, Camilla. They lived about 10 miles away, close enough to show up with casseroles and opinions. Close enough that I thought, if anything ever happens, they'll be there. For 5 years after my divorce, I didn't spend a single night away from Amira. I built my schedule around her school pickup, her dance recitals, her sudden fevers, her little hand slipping into mine without asking. I also had someone else in my life, my boyfriend, Ethan Brooks, steady and kind, but with a job that kept him anchored in Boston. He loved Amira, but he wasn't her parent, and I never wanted to put that weight fully on his shoulders. Then, in April 2023, my CEO called me into his office. He didn't waste time. He smiled like he was handing me a gift. "Evelyn," he said, "we want you in London. 3 months. Director role for the new branch." It was everything I'd worked for, the kind of jump that could double my salary and change our life. And it terrified me. I tried to solve it the responsible way first. I called Nathan. I asked if he could take Amira while I was gone. He declined, awkward, apologetic, saying his life was complicated, that his girlfriend was pregnant and the doctor didn't want her traveling. He said all the right words in all the wrong ways. Next, I considered hiring a caregiver. But 3 months is a long time to hand your child to a stranger, and every alarm bell inside me refused. By day 2, I was ready to turn down the assignment. Then my parents showed up at my door with homemade cake and bright smiles like fate had sent them right on time. Teresa watched me through dinner, her eyes sharp the way they always were. After dessert, she finally asked softly, "Evelyn, what's bothering you? You've been miles away all night." I hesitated, then told them everything. London, 3 months, the money, the fear. Philip and Teresa exchanged a glance. A small glance, quick, practiced. At the time, I thought it meant teamwork. Now I know it meant something else entirely. Philip set his fork down and said confidently, "Go, we'll take care of Amira." Teresa nodded, enthusiastic. "We can move into your house for those 3 months. You won't have to worry." Relief flooded me so fast I almost cried. Because when you're exhausted, when you're trying to be both provider and protector, the offer of help feels like a life raft. I smiled and said the sentence that haunts me now. "Thank you, that's a wonderful idea. Amira will be happy with you." I even offered them $1,500 a month for expenses, comfort, appreciation. They refused at first, then accepted after I insisted. We made the plan quickly, too quickly, and 2 weeks later, I left for London, believing I'd chosen the safest people in the world to watch over my child. I had no idea I was handing my daughter to the very people who would break her. London looks beautiful in pictures. In real life, when you're a mother sleeping alone in a hotel room with your child an ocean away, the city becomes a blur of glass buildings, gray skies, and the constant ache of missing someone you can't reach. The first week, I made myself a ritual. Every day at lunchtime, Boston time, I would shut my office door, silence every notification, and video call home. I lived for that moment when Amira's face would pop up on the screen, when she'd tell me something silly about school or how Grandpa Philip burned the toast again. At first, she did. She waved, she smiled, she tried. But somewhere around the 3rd week, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't obvious. It was like watching a candle slowly run out of wax, still lit, but weaker every day. Amira started talking less. Her answers became short, clipped, careful. If I asked, "What did you eat today?" she'd say, "Food." "What did you do after school?" "Stuff." She used to fill silence with 1,000 little details: who sat next to her at lunch, what her teacher said, which song got stuck in her head. Now she looked down more than she looked at me. Sometimes her eyes flicked off screen like she was listening for someone else. The first time I noticed it, I leaned closer to the camera and softened my voice. "Hey baby, are you okay?" Amira hesitated. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something. Then my mother's face appeared from the side, too close to the phone. "She's fine," Teresa said brightly. "She just misses you. Kids get moody. Don't overthink it." Amira didn't contradict her. She just shrank back a little. I told myself my mother was right, because believing your instincts means admitting something dark might be happening, and once you admit it, you can't unsee it. Still, the unease didn't leave. I started calling twice a day when I could. Sometimes I'd text Amira directly, but I rarely got responses. When I asked why, Teresa would laugh lightly and say, "She forgets where she put the phone. You know her." Except I did know her. Amira didn't forget things like that. She was the kid who lined up her pencils by color and reminded me of dentist appointments. One night, my boyfriend Ethan called me while I was pacing my hotel room, staring at the little "delivered" beneath the last message I'd sent my daughter. "Ethan, you've been quiet all evening. Talk to me." I tried to laugh it off. "Just tired." He didn't buy it. He never did. "Evelyn," he said, voice low, "something's been bothering you since you got there. Is Amira okay?" I hesitated, then exhaled. "She's different. She's not herself on the calls." Ethan was quiet for a beat. Then, carefully, "And your parents? They're not letting you talk to her alone, are they?" My throat tightened. "Sometimes they do. Sometimes Mom just shows up." "That's not normal," he said. "You know that, right?" I bristled, not at him, but at the fear underneath his words. "They're family." "Family can still be wrong," Ethan replied. And there it was, the first crack in the illusion. But I didn't step through it. I told him, "I'm sure it's fine," because the alternative was admitting I'd left my daughter vulnerable. The second month got worse. Amira stopped smiling almost completely. Even when I tried to make her laugh, pulling faces, telling her ridiculous stories about London buses, promising souvenirs, she'd just give me a small, polite curve of her lips, like she was acting the part of okay. Once, I caught a glimpse of her arm when she lifted it to push hair from her face. There were faint scratches. Not deep, not bloody, but enough to make my chest seize. "Amira," I said sharply, "what happened to your arm?" She froze. Teresa's voice cut in immediately. Too fast. "Oh, that. She fell while playing outside. You know how clumsy she can be." Clumsy. The word landed wrong. My daughter wasn't clumsy. She was cautious. She didn't even jump off playground swings like the other kids. Amira stared at the screen, eyes lowered. She didn't confirm. She didn't deny. She stayed silent. After the call ended, I sat staring at my phone, my hands trembling slightly. I called again right away. No answer. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, sounding annoyed. "It's late here," she said. "It's not late," I snapped. "It's afternoon in Boston." A beat of silence. Then her tone softened, sugary. "Evelyn, you're stressed. You're projecting. Everything is fine." I wanted to believe her. I wanted it so badly I almost forced myself to swallow my instincts like a pill. But that night, I dreamed of Amira standing in a narrow room with the lights off, whispering my name, and when I ran toward her, something pulled her away into the dark. I woke up sweating. And then, the moment that should have been my wake-up call came, and I still tried to rationalize it. One afternoon, I called home and Amira answered, but the camera was angled oddly. I could only see half her face. The room behind her looked cramped. White walls, stacked detergent bottles, a mop leaning in the corner. My stomach dropped. "Where are you?" I asked. Amira's eyes darted sideways. "Nowhere." "Amira," I said, slow and firm, "turn the camera." She didn't. Before I could push, my father's voice boomed from somewhere off-screen. "Who are you talking to?" Amira flinched so hard I saw it in her shoulders. Teresa appeared a second later, smiling too wide. "Oh, hi, honey." She was just tidying up. Tidying up. In my own home. In a space that looked suspiciously like the laundry room. I swallowed hard. "Can I talk to her alone for a minute?" Teresa's smile didn't change. "Why? It's fine. We're all here." My jaw tightened. "Because I'm her mother." For a second, something sharp flickered in Teresa's eyes. Annoyance. Maybe even anger. Then she laughed lightly. "Evelyn, don't start. You're far away. Trust us." Trust us. Those two words can be a weapon when spoken by the wrong person. After that call, Ethan rang me again. "I heard it in your voice," he said immediately. "What happened?" I told him about the camera angle, the detergent bottles, the mop. Ethan went quiet, then said the sentence I didn't want to hear. "Evelyn, I think they're hiding something." I gripped the edge of my desk, staring at the London skyline through the window. "They wouldn't hurt her." "You don't know that," he said. "Not anymore." I hated that he was right. Still, I didn't act. Not yet. Because part of me was terrified that if I accused my parents, I'd be wrong. And if I was wrong, I'd become the ungrateful daughter who saw monsters where there weren't any. So I waited. I watched. I tried to gather proof in my head like it would protect her. And then the truth came anyway, exploding into my life at 1:00 a.m. when my mother's phone lit up my hotel room and my daughter begged me to save her. That call wasn't the beginning of the nightmare. It was the moment the nightmare stopped hiding. As soon as it ended, I didn't debate. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my suitcase with shaking hands and called my CEO. He picked up groggy, but the second I said Amira, his tone sharpened. My daughter is in danger, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Too cold, too determined. I'm coming back to Boston immediately. There was no argument. Go, he said. We'll handle work. I booked the earliest flight. I didn't care about cost. I didn't care about the schedule. I didn't care if my career burned to the ground. Not if it meant getting to my child. At 8 o'clock a.m., I was on a plane back to Boston. I didn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My body was there, strapped into a seat, but my mind was already at my front door, picturing my daughter in that cold laundry room. By the time we landed, my hands were numb from gripping the armrests. I took a taxi straight home. I didn't call my parents. I didn't warn my sister. If they were guilty, warning them would give them time to erase the truth. And if I was wrong, then I would apologize later. The taxi slowed as we turned onto my street. My heart hammered harder with every house we passed. Then, as we got close, I saw it. A red car parked neatly in my driveway. I recognized it immediately. Camilla's Honda Civic. My sister was there, which meant Amira hadn't exaggerated, which meant the people I trusted were all under my roof, and my daughter was still inside with them. I paid the driver without looking at him and stepped out onto the sidewalk. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at my own house like it belonged to someone else. My first instinct was to run inside and grab Amira and never look back. But a colder, sharper part of me whispered, if you go in now, they'll deny everything. They'll twist the story. They'll make you look unstable. No, I needed proof. Enough proof that no one could ever touch my daughter again. And that's when I turned away from my own front door and walked next door to Pete's house. Pete opened the door like he was looking at a ghost. He stared at me for a full 3 seconds before speaking. His gray eyebrows shot up, his mouth hanging slightly open. Evelyn, he said slowly, aren't you supposed to be in London? I didn't answer right away. The moment I stepped into his living room, the adrenaline holding me upright finally cracked. My knees went weak. Pete caught my arm instinctively, steadying me like I weighed nothing at all. Pete, I said, my voice shaking despite every effort to control it, I need your help. Something in my tone must have told him this wasn't small talk. He shut the door, locked it, and guided me to the sofa. Sit, he said firmly. Now tell me what's going on. So I did. I told him about the late-night call, about Amira whispering in fear, about the laundry room, about chores and food and my parents' voices cutting her off during calls, about the way my stomach had twisted into knots for weeks while I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Pete listened without interrupting. When I finished, his face had gone pale beneath the weathered lines of age and experience. He rubbed his jaw slowly, eyes narrowing. I knew something wasn't right, he muttered. My heart skipped. You did? He nodded. Didn't want to assume, but I've been watching that house for a while now. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. For nearly a month, strangers have been coming and going. Men and women in nice clothes, clipboards, tablets, looked like real estate people. My breath caught. Real estate? Pete sighed. A few days ago, I was out gardening. Your father didn't realize I could hear him talking to one of them. I heard words like appraisal and market value. My hands clenched into fists. They're trying to sell my house. Pete nodded slowly. When he saw me listening, he told me they were selling their house to buy something bigger. I didn't think much of it at the time. I did, because suddenly everything snapped into place. The urgency, the control, the lies. This wasn't just about helping. This was a plan that involved my child being silenced and displaced so they could do whatever they wanted without resistance. I stood up so fast the room spun. I need to see her, I said, but not like this. I need proof. Pete followed me to the window facing my front yard. You might want to sit down, he said quietly. Through the glass, I saw my daughter. Amira stood in the middle of the lawn under the harsh summer sun, gripping a lawnmower almost as big as she was. Her shoulders were hunched, her movements slow and careful, like she was afraid of doing something wrong. Sweat soaked through her shirt. On the porch, my mother stood with her arms crossed, watching like a supervisor. A few feet away, Casey sat comfortably in a chair, sipping water, phone in hand, legs crossed. I felt something inside me tear. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to keep watching. Amira pushed the mower back and forth in uneven lines. When she paused to wipe her forehead, my mother snapped something. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. Amira flinched and immediately kept going. I pulled out my phone and hit record. My hands shook so badly I had to brace my elbows against the window frame. I filmed everything. The way Amira was ordered to pick up trash afterward. The way she carried heavy bags with small, trembling arms. The way Casey was handed snacks while my daughter wasn't offered anything. At one point, Amira tripped while dragging a trash bin. She fell hard onto the driveway. I sucked in a breath, my nails digging into my palm. My mother didn't rush to help. She pointed at the spilled trash and yelled. Amira scrambled to her feet, apologizing over and over, picking up garbage with shaking hands. That was it. If Pete hadn't been there, I would have stormed out of his house and gone straight through my front door. But I stayed. Because rage without strategy only gives abusers a chance to escape. As evening fell, Amira was still working. I watched her wipe down the porch, walk the dog, hang laundry. By the time the sun dipped low, she looked exhausted beyond what any child should ever feel. At around 9:30 p.m., the porch light flicked off. They'll be going to bed soon, Pete said quietly. I nodded. We wait. Waiting was torture. Every minute felt like a betrayal of my daughter. Every second, I imagined her curled up on that cold floor, wondering if I was coming. At around 10:50 p.m., the house went completely dark. I stood up. It's time. Pete placed a hand on my shoulder. I am coming with you. I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off. You need a witness, he said firmly, and I'll record everything. For the first time since landing in Boston, I felt something like support instead of fury. 10 minutes later, we stood at my front door. My house. I slid the key into the lock slowly, every click sounding too loud in the silence. The door opened without resistance. Inside, it smelled different, like detergent, like something sterile. We moved carefully through the living room. Pete's phone held steady, recording. I led the way toward the back of the house, toward the laundry room. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might wake the entire house. I reached for the light switch. When the light flicked on, the world stopped. Amira lay curled up on the floor, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her small body trembled as silent sobs shook her shoulders. She wasn't asleep. She was crying quietly, carefully, like she was afraid to be heard. For a split second, she looked up in terror. Then her eyes met mine. Mom! See you in the next part. Mom! Amira's voice cracked the room wide open. She scrambled to her feet, the thin blanket sliding off her shoulders as she ran straight into my arms. The force of her small body hitting mine almost knocked the breath out of me. I dropped to my knees instinctively, wrapping her in every inch of myself, my hands trembling as they pressed into her back. I'm here, I whispered into her hair, my lips brushing her crown again and again, like I could erase the last 3 months with touch alone. I've got you. I'm not going anywhere. She clung to me like she was afraid I might disappear if she loosened her grip. I could feel how light she was, too light. Her ribs were more pronounced than they should have been, her shoulders sharp under my palms. Behind me, Pete kept recording. Silent. Steady. His presence was grounding, a reminder that this wasn't a nightmare I'd wake up from alone. Amira's sobs echoed down the hallway. That's what woke them. Heavy footsteps thundered from upstairs, followed by my mother's sharp, irritated voice. What is all this noise, Amira? What are you— She stopped short in the doorway. So did my father. So did my sister Camilla. They stood there frozen, framed by the hallway light, staring at me, kneeling on the laundry room floor with my daughter in my arms, and a man beside me holding a phone up like a mirror they couldn't avoid. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then Teresa recovered first. Her face rearranged itself into a smile so quick it made my skin crawl. Evelyn, she said brightly, you're back. Why didn't you tell us? We would have picked you up at the airport. I stood slowly, keeping Amira pressed against my chest. So you'd have time to clean up? My voice was calm, too calm. So you could hide what you've been doing to my daughter? Philip's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, shoulders squared, authority rolling off him like it always had when I was a child. You should be very careful with those accusations, he said. Camilla rushed in immediately, her voice high and defensive. I don't know what she told you, Evelyn, but you're misunderstanding everything. We're helping. She likes sleeping here. It's cooler. Amira whimpered against my chest. That sound snapped something in me. I saw everything, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I recorded how you treated her. I heard it from Amira herself, and I know you're trying to sell my house behind my back. The air shifted. The lies faltered. No one denied it. Camilla's expression hardened first. She pointed at Amira, contempt dripping from her words. Don't believe her. She lies for attention. She's spoiled, Evelyn. You made her that way. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I reacted. My hand moved before my brain caught up, striking Camilla across the face with a sharp crack that echoed down the hall. She stumbled back with a scream, clutching her cheek. Casey shrieked from behind her mother. Philip lunged toward me in fury, his fist swinging wildly. I dodged on instinct and shoved him back hard. He staggered, doubled over, gasping as he collapsed against the wall. Teresa screamed, How dare you hit your father? I stepped toward her, every ounce of restraint slipping. I grabbed the front of her cardigan and shoved her back against the wall, my face inches from hers. "How dare you?" I hissed. "How dare you do this to my child?" For the first time in my life, my mother looked afraid of me, truly afraid. Pete's hand landed on my shoulder. "That's enough," he said gently but firmly. "Let her go. Call the police. I've got everything on video." His words cut through the red haze in my head. I looked down. Amira was watching. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not just of them, but of me too. I released my mother immediately and stepped back, forcing myself to breathe. "This ends now," I said, my voice shaking but controlled. "Not with fists, with the law." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 20 minutes later, police lights painted my house in red and blue. Statements were taken, evidence reviewed. A child psychologist spoke gently with Amira while a female officer stayed by her side. My parents and sister were escorted out of my home in handcuffs. As they passed me, none of them met my eyes. At the station, everything moved in slow motion. I told my story. Pete handed over his recordings. Amira, brave beyond her years, told hers. In the early hours of the morning, we were finally allowed to leave. As I buckled Amira into the car, a familiar man approached us. Camilla's husband. He looked exhausted, hollow. "We're getting divorced," he said quietly. "She drained our savings. Took loans I didn't know about. Almost $300,000 in debt." The truth settled heavy in my chest. That was why. Money. They weren't just cruel. They were desperate, and they'd chosen my daughter as collateral. When we got home, Amira fell asleep almost instantly in my arms. I carried her to her bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and swore to myself that no one would ever hurt her again. I didn't know yet that the final betrayal was still waiting for me, hidden inside my own desk. Amira didn't let go of me all night. Even after I laid her gently in her own bed, the bed she hadn't slept in for months, she reached for my wrist in her sleep, fingers curling around me like an anchor. I pulled a chair up beside her mattress and stayed there, watching her chest rise and fall, counting each breath like proof she was still safe. The house was quiet in a way it had never been before. No footsteps upstairs, no sharp voices, no tension humming through the walls, just silence, and the wreckage they left behind. I brushed her hair back and noticed how thin her arms were, faint scratches, bruises already fading to yellow and green. Each mark felt like an accusation carved into my chest. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her sleeping face. "I should have seen it sooner." When her grip finally loosened, I stood quietly and walked to my home office. I needed to gather documents for the police, birth certificates, custody papers, insurance, anything they might ask for tomorrow. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. That's when I saw it. A folder I didn't recognize. Cream-colored, neatly labeled. Inside were my house papers, right where I'd always kept them. And beneath them, a document that made my entire body go cold. Power of attorney, granting full authority to Philip and Teresa Anderson to act on my behalf, including the authority to sell my home. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. My signature, perfectly written. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to stay standing. Memory crashed into me. The airport, 2 months ago. My boarding group being called. My father handing me a stack of papers. "Just authorization," he'd said calmly, "so we can stay in the house and approve minor repairs if needed." I remembered skimming the first page, maybe the second, the pressure of time, the trust. I never saw this page. They'd hidden it underneath. They hadn't just abused my daughter. They had planned this from the start. I gathered the papers carefully, my hands steady now, not from calm, but from something colder. Resolve. The next morning, Child Protective Services arrived. The caseworker, Jenny, was kind but thorough. She spoke with Amira privately, then with me, documenting everything. By afternoon, a temporary restraining order was issued. My parents and sister were not allowed anywhere near us. A week later, Amira and I were back on a plane, but this time she sat beside me, her small hand tucked into mine, her head resting on my shoulder. I returned to London to finish my assignment. I brought my daughter with me. Work was harder, sleep was lighter, but I never left her with anyone again. Not family, not friends, not convenience. 2 years have passed now. Amira is stronger, braver, still cautious, but healing. We have cameras on every door. She checks them before bed sometimes just to feel safe, and I let her. Healing doesn't follow a schedule. Pete comes over every Sunday. She calls him Grandpa Pete now. As for my parents and sister, they were convicted. 4 years for child abuse, 3 for conspiracy and fraud. Some people said it was too harsh. I don't. Blood doesn't guarantee love. And love, real love, never makes a child sleep on a laundry room floor. If you were me, what would you have done?